Hello and welcome to the Wise Leader Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Faith Watson. Today, I'm very pleased to introduce to you our special guest, Dr. Rohan Jowallah, and he will be sharing his amazing story and provide us with some practical words of wisdom to help us lead ourselves and others. Dr. Jowallah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Thanks for the invite, Faith. I really appreciate it. And let me say, it's indeed a pleasure for me to be here. I was happy when I entered the room and I heard another voice that was similar to mine. I realized that you are also a Jamaican. And I lived and worked in Jamaica for the younger days of my life. As a matter of fact, I worked in Jamaica as a teacher, social worker. And in 2002, the Lord opened the opportunity for me to get a job in England as a special education needs teacher. After 5 years, he gave me another opportunity to work as a senior lecturer at the University of Wolverhampton. I have been blessed. My journey brought me to the United States in 2013, where I'm currently working as a senior instructional designer. To God be the glory. I'm saying that this is a wonderful opportunity for me to work in an institution, and it has given me another array of opportunities. I am blessed. I am blessed.
Wow, me too. Thank you. I was very pleased to find out that you're a Jamaican, and I'm really looking forward to get into your story. And I couldn't help but noticing your title, the title of the conversation for today, In His Steps. Why did you title the conversation like that?
You know, I titled this conversation in its steps, because I think every day we have to try to walk in God's steps. And it's so important because I had an aunt that I will talk a little bit more about her, that she was so instrumental. And I remember her telling me her stories of conversion from one religion to the next. And that one book, she titled it In Its Steps, led her to the Lord with another book. So I think when I reflect on what she has taught me over a period of time, I realize that without walking in His steps, it's going to be impossible for us to succeed in life. And that's the bottom line.
Wow, amazing. And you mentioned earlier also about some different aspects of your journey, or you left from Jamaica to the UK and then where you are. But could you help us understand, Psalm 75 verses 6 to 7 indicates that promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He puts down one and sets up another. So could you help us understand some pivotal moments, share us some pivotal moments of your journey so that we can understand how God orchestrated your career? Like something that happened and you said, that must have been God.
I think God always has His plan, and I can't help but thinking about my early possible stage in life. I mentioned my aunt, whom I refer to as a mother, and she converted from Hindu to Christianity in the 1940s. And this was based on a near experience. She found the Almighty God. She was converted and she gave up her journey to be a businesswoman to enter the profession of ministry. And she worked for 53 years until she passed in 2014.
Wow.
She had come into the life of my mother, and my mother was orphaned at the age of 5. And my aunt took her in. And she went to Bible college. My aunt went to Bible college, returned to Jamaica, and then had my mother living with her. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she got pregnant while my aunt was ministering in Kingston. And back in those days, you would stay at the church and you will also have a house to live in that is adjoining the church. Based on the circumstances, my mother had to move out. This again placed her in a vulnerable situation, and she got pregnant again this time it was for me. I was going to be born at that time, so I was about to come into this world. We're in turmoil because of the situation, and my mother is struggling, and my aunt decided to help. But the help cometh from above, because my aunt got married roughly in the 1970s, early 1970s, and she decided to ask her husband if she could take the boys along with her. That's my brother and of course me. And her husband said yes. God provided a home. He provided a father. He provided me with the support necessary that I would be able to navigate today's world. As living in a pastor's home, I must say, had its challenges. Nevertheless, I was blessed. I was blessed to have had two mothers, a father. And let me say this, without that intervention, without the Lord providing a pathway for us to move from an environment that could be challenging and crippling for our childhood, he placed us in a home that would provide us with care, love, and a structure that I am to this day grateful for the opportunity that was given to me from the above.
So that's amazing, because those early years, those formative years are so important. Could you also share with us some other pivotal moments as you continued in your career? And I know you're also a keynote speaker and so on, as well. Share with us some pivotal moments, some other moments.
Yes, I think the last 2 years has been a very challenging time for many, but within the context of COVID and everything, I had to say to myself, what is my mission on earth? And that was very powerful, because as I told you earlier, at the age of 5, my mom was orphaned. She was orphaned because of a deadly disease that wiped out her mom, father, and others around her. And when COVID struck, I asked God, please allow me to live through this moment, because I want to see my children grow up. And I said to myself, God, what is my mission on earth? And a voice came to me and said, you need to do what you've been doing all along, and you need to put the effort in, and you need to maximize all the skills that I've given you over the period of time. And you need to disseminate, share with others your journey, your story, and your knowledge of various areas that you have come across. So I think as you reach these points that you think that you're going to stop, I think the mission is assessing where you are moving forward. So the pivotal point for me for the last 2 years was COVID-19, the pandemic, and how I navigated that to kind of somewhat reinvent myself, but also to do what the Lord wants me to do by providing a pathway for others to learn and understand key concepts within our society.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for serving. So how about, you're a keynote speaker? How does that, how was that able to happen for you?
I think when, as a keynote speaker and a presenter, I must say one of the first things I do is ask God for guidance. I remember someone catching me off guard and saw my head down, and someone said, what is he doing? And someone whispered, he's praying. And I actually was praying, because I think wherever you get that opportunity to share, you have to have that light. And as an individual using that opportunity, I want to be a vessel. If I'm talking about inclusion, I want to be a vessel for change. If I'm talking about early childhood education, I want to be a vessel that will enhance the lives of others. So each task or each presentation or each conversation must have an outcome. It means even if I'm changing one mind at a time or one child's life within that context for intervention, then that's the mission. So I think that's ultimately the goal, to serve. And I think service is so important. Yesterday my daughter was talking to me about some business. I just add this to this conversation, and she said, you're not a businessman. You're too kind. You're too kind. And I'm saying to myself, what would you do? She said, no. You've set yourself up so you can have that. But no, you're kind. It's like you're giving away everything. And I said to myself, maybe I need to reassess my kindness. but guess what? I have no intention of changing. I maybe need a different structure. So it's evaluating the process, but you don't want to be in a position that you're not able to help. So I think that's always about giving to others. That's also key on my journey.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. And I know that this next question might be a little bit awkward for you, but I think that your answer will help us on our journey as we lead ourselves and others. What are some things, some factors that you think God may have used to promote you? For example, what do people tend to appreciate about you or perhaps have noted about you?
I think when people look at me, they ask me a few questions. I'm able to set up that rapport. So people say I'm easier to talk with. And I think that's important. I think when you're looking at what people say about you, they say you're kind. Some will say that don't let people take advantage of you in that sense. But I think when people look at me, they see someone they can talk with, they can have a conversation with, and someone who's willing to listen. I go back in the position of, if I'm going to give someone guidance, I'm going to say that guidance should be applied to my life too. So I always take the position because I think no one is perfect. So therefore, if you are presenting yourself as a perfect person, you're lying. So it's always sincerity. I can't give all the solutions, but if I were in your case or a situation, I would move towards having that solution. So I think when you talk about rapport, building relationships, sustaining relationships, I will call everyone I know over a period of time and they'll say, listen, I can always depend on you. Another thing that I would say to you at this point in time, I've learned over the years that I value people who are much older than I am, because I've learned over a period of time to have my acquaintance with people in their 70s, because sometimes they do not have the friendship. And I value friendship. I value friendships of my mom, although she has passed on, I still call those individuals up. So I think when people look at me, they see a kindness, they see someone who cares. And I think that's so important in today's world when we have people who are not as caring as they should.
Wow. Rapport, you're kind, listen, your sincerity, your relationship with others, being dependable, valuing even the wisdom of older people. Wow, amazing. And I would add one thing, being punctual. I saw how early you were for our session today. I came on Zoom very early and there you were coming in.
Yeah, you have to be early. I think it's important to have these things, and you never know, because technology is one of the things that I'm always concerned about. You can have or think you're going to be having connections, but you don't. So that's important to ensure that you kind of remove these barriers that can limit the conversation.
Yeah. And I'm benefiting from your kindness too, because you're doing this, you're not charging, you're sharing your wisdom for other people to learn. So we thank you for serving as well. So thank you. So could you, speaking of sharing, just going a little bit deeper, could you share with us a few lessons or words of wisdom that have helped you on your leadership journey?
I think when you look at leadership, I think you have to consider, what do you want from leadership? And I think it's important when we think about moving, we have to think about how we're going to impact the world. You mentioned a few things, and as you mentioned them, I thought about, let your light shine before men that they may see your good work and glorify the Father. And that's so important, because if you are going to lead from a biblical principle, you have to ensure that you are walking the walk and you're talking the talk. Because you know what? Sometimes you might come across someone that say, I didn't know he was a Christian. I didn't know he was religious. And that is very sad, because if someone is going and is a part of Christianity, then their light should be shining. So I think that's so important as a leader, to allow your light to shine. I think when you think about leadership and you're coming from a biblical perspective, I think you have to be a shepherd. You have to care for the flock and those around you, and those around you must know that you care. They must have a sense of belonging. So when we think about things that might pop up in our workplace regarding inclusion and having a sense of belonging, a Christian should be able to create that atmosphere in any organization. And I think as leadership within a Christian framework, that is what is required. And I think we have to think about preparation. How do we prepare our pathways to ensure that we do have these connections in organizations?
Wow. Let your light shine. Walk the walk. And speaking of walk the walk, I think that really is true of you, because you were recommended as a speaker for this summit by your boss. I think that's
Yes,
commendable.
yes.
So
I thought so too.
yeah. So you would have had to walk the walk for him to think that you would be a good fit for this summit. So
I
thank
am
you.
happy. I'm happy that he was able to see me in that light. I'm very delighted that he was able to see me in that light.
Yes. So now, could you, and this might be just be a good segue to the next question. What do you tend to appreciate or admire in a leader?
I think when I think about leaders or persons in leadership, I think within an organization, the leader should be supportive. I think we are at a point in our society that we need to ensure that leadership understands the need for fairness and the need for addressing issues that are important, not only to the organization, but to the individuals within their organization from a granular level. And I think that's so important, because if you can buy into these hearts and minds of those who are your workers or your employees, then you're halfway near there towards the mission of the organization. Mm-hmm. The reality is, at times, leaders need to understand that you might not see eye to eye with them, but they need to understand there's a willingness to exchange idea within an atmosphere of respect. And I think if leaders are going to be driven by any moral compass, where is it most appropriate than to use the biblical principles to outline what is the true intention of your leadership style? And I think it's so important, because when we look at the work of Jesus on earth and how he governed and moved around, we understand that he was able to do so many things because he was like the best social worker, the master teacher. He was the best doctor. He did everything to the best of his capacity, while on earth. So as leaders, we need to exemplify some of the principles, or most of the principles, or all of the principles that were outlined while he was on his mission on earth.
Wow. Thank you very much. And I think your answer is actually a good segue to the next question. Which I know it might be challenging for you to share a favorite Bible verse, but I'm going to ask you to do that. Could you share your favorite Bible verse and why? What
comes to mind is Ecclesiastes 12, verse 1. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. And I think it goes back to my aunt, because back in those days, we had what was called a promise box. And from that box, I would take a card every day before going to high school and read that scripture verse that was printed on that card and put it back in. And she always allowed us to go through the scriptures. So at an early age, I knew that it was important to serve the Lord. It was important to ensure that you follow the scriptures. And I think it's also important to understand that you don't want to be old and not be able to move and then say, all right, you know what, you're going to follow the Almighty. You want to start while you're young and you can contribute to that building of the kingdom, which is so important.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with you. It's so important, because someone looking at your life, they might say, wow, look where he is. I would like to get some of his wisdom, be able to, somebody might even be saying, how do I become a blank? Whatever a leader's title is, but they don't know your source.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
And so I like that you're sharing to say, listen, God is my source. And verses like these, remember thy creator in the days of thy youth. So thanks for sharing that. Um, what about a favorite proverb?
I think this one I like. It's Proverbs 12:15. The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to others. It's so important that sometimes we tend to want to go down our own way, but if we take advice from others, we might be able to get a more informed position on an issue. And the reality is that everyone needs guidance at some point in their life. So if we take our own perspective all the time, at all times, then we're going to find ourselves in somewhat of a difficult sort of road. And I think one of the things I've always said to students that I've taught, if I told you there was an alligator over there in that pond, would you put your foot in? And they would say, no, sir, I wouldn't. So I'm saying to you, at this point in time, it's always important to take guidance from others. So guess what? Don't think you're right or your views is always the correct one. It's always good to listen, learn, and understand other people's perspectives too.
Well said. And speaking of taking advice from others, let's imagine that someone is trying to make a decision. It might be between, two alternatives. The alternatives might not even be a good and bad situation. They're just trying to make a decision. What advice would you give to someone who is struggling to make a wise decision?
I won't tell you what example I'm thinking about, but this was a more recent example last 2 years. And I would say pray. I would say pray and explore the signs the Lord is showing you, because I think it's so important to look at the signs. You don't want to confirm what you're thinking, because that's confirmation bias. You're confirming what you're thinking or what you want or decision you're trying to achieve. But you should have some level of objectivity. Reflect on what the Lord is showing you. Reflect on where you are coming from to understand the possible pathways that the Lord is opening up to you. I would say if you're given two opportunities, ask yourself which of these opportunities will allow you to serve your mission on earth. And I would also add another point. Ask yourself which of these positions will allow you greater opportunities to serve God. And I think those are two things that you have to take into consideration. There are some times when we ask ourselves, why are we doing this task? But He has a master plan for us. And you need to go back in time sometimes to make these connections, to understand that what you are experiencing now is the fulfillment of God's promise to you. So therefore, you need to understand. Do not confirm your own confirmation that you set out with, but read the signs, because it's always there for you to understand.
Wow. You said so much. Let me see if I can. You said, be careful of confirming your own bias, being objective, know where you're coming from. Look at your mission, see which one will serve your mission on earth and the greatest opportunity to serve God. Yeah, I like that. Which option will give God the most glory, look back in time to His promises. And by doing this will limit the possibility of just confirming your own bias.
And yeah, I think those are so many times we
and
hear
of course pray.
Yes,
I had to say that.
we have to pray.
Go ahead.
Sometimes we tend to confirm what we want, and we by confirming what we want, we go against God's will, because that's not God's will. He has another plan. I would go back in time in 1996, 97. I got my first job with students of special needs. And that was not my first teaching job, but working with students with special needs. And I asked God, why am I here? And I asked God, why am I here? And a voice said to me, every opportunity I'm giving you is for a reason. And I happily worked that job for a year and a half. And a couple years after, 3 years after, a recruiter from England came and they wanted a special education needs teacher. They wanted one, and no one had that experience. And I was given that experience. So it's all connected. As I stated before, the experiences come together to guide you into another pathway.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. So you have experience in special education, and you mentioned being inclusive earlier. And we are living in unusual times that leaders have different important decisions that they have to make. So how do you balance, for example, the issue of inclusion with dominant debates that are sometimes contentious to what you believe?
I'm happy for that question. The reality is that we live in a diverse society, and diverse society has several ideological assumptions. And within our diverse society, we have various views and perspectives. And these views, in reality, do conflict our religious beliefs and sometimes our own ideological positions.
Mm-hmm.
It is important for me and for everyone who's going to be walking the way that we should walk in our lives according to the King, to understand that Jesus did not refuse to help anyone on his journey on earth. He was always there to help. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we have to understand that while I do have my personal views and my own beliefs, I should not enter into a mode of judgment. Mm. Because if I do enter into this mode of judging individuals, then it creates tension. And then this pathway of tension creates a pathway for me to make judgments on others. Mm. So in summary, if we are to explore society using an inclusive lens, I think we should rather remove that judgmental aspect that we have on certain people in our society. Mm. Because the Lord wanted us to be inclusive. He wants us to live our life as pleasing as we should. We should walk the talk of inclusion by serving others. And it goes back to the point, if you're serving others and they see the light that is shining through you, they will glorify the Creator because they see his work. We are living in a society that we need to have a change of heart and mind, and this can only happen when we help and serve others and care for others and care for even those who hate us based on what we believe in.
Wow. And I know you're an expert on this, and we could probably have another interview on that topic. So thanks for sharing, giving us a glimpse of what we could do in that area. And speaking of learning more and the possibility of learning more, are there any resources? Is there a resource that you would recommend for our audience to review?
Yes, I like the concept of servant leader. And I would recommend a book written by Ken Blanchard, in which Ken puts forward 52 ways to be a servant leader. Ken addresses issues of humility, conversation, respect, which are also principles within our own frame of Christianity that will guide organizations. I think it's a wonderful book. And I think if you can just take away 10 or let's say 15 principles from that or ways, then we can understand the concept of moving towards a greater inclusive organization.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And viewers, I will be linking to that book below this video. So please feel free to check it out. Thank you for sharing that resource as well. So you have been sharing a number of things, and it's obvious to me that God has really been involved in your career. What would you say to someone? I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm just throwing a question out now. What would you say to someone, they see you, they perhaps know where you're coming from and where you are, and they're thinking, oh, well, it may or may not have been God. You just got there. what would you say to someone to let them know for sure that God is the one who orchestrated your career?
Nothing happens by coincidence.
Mm.
I look back on my time going to school when I was ill with asthma, 14, I couldn't breathe. And I was rushed to the Conroe Regional Hospital, and I prayed God help me along the way. Next 2 weeks, I was unable to go to school, but I went back. So that is no coincidence when God intervenes. And I go to school and I'm in a history class, and the teacher goes away for 6 months on long leave. Another teacher comes, and that teacher says to me, you have the power to do anything you want to do. And I'm going to recommend that you do the highest standard of history. And when the other teacher comes back, she said to me, I don't know why you signed up for that when you can't pass. But God intervened and found someone who I found a love with by engaging in history, and I was able to pass that. I move forward now, 2014. It's no coincidence, 2015 to be exact, 2015, when I'm at my mom's funeral, and the teacher who changed my life in history pops up and says to me, Ron, I'm here to see you, because I did not know she had a connection with a friend of my mom. So they both came. It's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that my aunt would have been converted from Hindu to Christianity at an early age after being healed by the Almighty God. That's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that she said to me, all right, you know what? I want you and your brother to come and live with me. It's no coincidence that she gave us and taught us the scriptures on a weekly day, and had our Bible study on Saturday and taught us to read. It's no coincidence that she taught me the heights of great men and women were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward through the night. That's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that when you look at how many people attended her funeral, she went to her grave holding so many secrets for others, because they found her to be a person they could trust. I could go on and on and on. So for those looking in, if you and others understand the power of faith, the power of God to guide you, if you trust and believe in his word, then guess what? There are no coincidences. He guides you every step of the way.
Well said, well said. You have shared such practical words of wisdom and encouragement, and given us a peek into how God has really ordered your life. Oh, he has ordered your steps. Now I understand even more fully why you titled this conversation In His Steps. Thank you very much for sharing. And I just wonder if you could leave our viewers with a call to action or an encouragement or a word of wisdom.
I would say the fundamental pathway for us is to go back to what I said, let your light shine before men and women, that they may see your work and glorify the Father who is in heaven. And I think that's so important. We have to ask ourselves, what is our mission on earth? Our mission on earth is to serve the Almighty. And if you're doing contrary to that, we need to realign ourselves. We need to engage ourselves in what needs to be done. And the call for action is to let your light shine. So if you're not doing this at this point in time, you need to refocus as a Christian leader, that is. Because if you can do that, then your mission is being fulfilled every day. And guess what? That light must be shone every day, and every hour.
Wow. Thank you for that call to action. So basically, just to understand, would you say then that we are at a disadvantage if we are not walking with God and letting our light shine?
I think we are at a great disadvantage, because guess what? We're not fulfilling his promise. And he wants us, he has a mission for every individual. You know, some people are gifted speakers, individuals are gifted editors, some people are just gifted at lighting, but all of us have talents. you know. So it's not like we're gifted, some are gifted and some are not talented. We all have talents and we are gifted, you know. So when we enter the world, we all, and everything is just as important. It's just as important. So whatever you're doing, I remember back in my days when I was roughly 8 or 9, I saw this woman coming to church every Saturday, and she would put flowers on that podium every Saturday. She did it for 25 years. That was her journey. That was her mission. She was letting her light shine. You know, yes, some people who would have done other tasks, but the grand entry was that Sunday morning service. But you must understand there are so many people doing things behind the scene, and their lights are also being shown every single day. So we just have to understand that our mission may vary, but we have one commonality, is that we're here to glorify God.
Well said. Dr. Jowallah, thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today.
Let me say thanks for having me, and may God continue to bless and keep you and guide your work.
Thank you. You're welcome. And viewers, we thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. Please feel free to share it with others, and we hope that you will join us in the next one.